Moikka moi, it's Riikka Kovasin here with the third and final part of Follow Your Dreams, a set of ATCs for Seth Apter Creative Team. Throughout the process I have used stencils in a multitude of ways, and this video is no exception. I still have 2 techniques to share with you. Let's get started with the first one. With this technique I'm using embroidery thread and kind of doing embroidery using the stencil as my guide. While on these cards I only make kind of lines just with little stitches, you could go overboard with embroidery. You could make leaves or flowers or even birds, especially if you're really handy with the needlework. But if you want to just have a little bit of different materials added to your project, then using the stencil as a guide to add holes where to sew, and then using embroidery thread is a wonderful way to add another material to your project. For the first card I only made a couple of lines, but for the other I'm making a circle. I'm keeping these designs quite easy so they are quick to make, but also as I'm working with such a small area I can't really add huge designs because there's still layers to come. I repeat the embroidery to each card. Then another stencil technique. I'm calling this cutouts. If you're really confident of your use of craft knife, you could cut through the stencil, but well, there's always the option that something goes wrong. Your hand slips and then you ruined your stencil. So I'll highly recommend using the stencil as a sketching tool. I'm using a black gel pen to sketch these designs to my cardstock, and at this stage I thought that I'm then flipping the design so there's no markings on there, so I could use the black pen, but I actually ended up liking the markings so much that I even highlighted them in a later stage. But if you want to have less of a fuss, then by all means use a pencil. What else the sketching and not cutting through allows me to do is I can then manipulate the design. So even though I'm using 2 stencils and making 8 elements, all of them are individual ones. These stencils are XL and spinner. So while I'm cutting using scissors and a craft knife, I can then manipulate and kind of alter the design, just keeping in mind that like in stencils it needs to have bridges in order to stay put. So here all the elements are done, and like you see they all are different. I then used the black gel pen to doodle on top, kind of highlighting those sketch marks I already had in there, and also add a little bit of white Posca pen in the mix, kind of the opposites of the color scheme, the light and black. Then it's time to put everything together. I have all the elements laid out in the table, and then I just add and layer them together. First I add the fabric piece I made on top of the card base I have, then the just made cutout, and then a little bit extra. I chose these leather brads and some buttons to go and finish the embellishments or the layers. I'm not sure if you noticed, but where the brads were first laid out to the table, it said Seth Team. I use a pin to help me get the brad through all the layers, especially the fabric is a little bit tricky, but I manage in the end. I then layer the elements to each card the same way. First the base, then the fabric element, then the cutout, and then the leather brad, and then I'm gluing a button on top to kind of make the button look like it was sewn to the project, I add a little bit of the same embroidery thread I have in the background to the button before gluing. Then it's just the final details to each card. First I add a word sticker to each of them, and then an eyelet to some of them. I'm using a copper tone eyelet, so everything will go nicely together, to add some interest to some of the cards. Maybe the cutout elements a little bit smaller in that, or the background that is still showing underneath all the layers doesn't have that much going on as the other cards, so some of them need a little bit of extra. After that, the set is done, and you will see the photo of the finished 8 cards and also some detail shots. I hope you'll like the project, and even more I hope that you find some inspiration or new ideas to try out. And well, if you like the video or the series, please consider subscribing. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.